Shalom, everyone. I'm. I came to. I'm on the line. I mean, on the. I was on the internet, and I was listening to some of the African channels where they're saying that French is trying to. Is thinking about going to war with West Africa. So I started thinking about the books that I had. I have a book where it's called "The Myth, the Lost Tribe of Myth," and there's also a map in here that gives the areas where there were actually Hebrew Israelite colonies in Africa around Morocco, Mauritania, Senegal, Ivory Coast, along with the Slave Coast and Gold Coast, Benin, Cameroon, all of this area here. There were um, colonies of Hebrew colonies, or what they call Jewish colonies. The book said Jewish colonies, which are still Hebrew Israelite colonies. So, because I was looking at my other map, and I was looking at my other map, the map from the book, and when you see Ivory Coast on the map here, there were colonies there. And I did a video with showing you the different areas on the map um, that shows the different Hebrew Israelite in West Africa and colonies sitting in those areas was Sierra Leone. There were the um, Ivory Coast, and right on the Ivory Coast is above Ivory Coast is Ashantis, the Dahomies, and then right beneath Ashanti and Dahomey, it has the Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, and Slave Coast. And then you also have where it says Benin, Togo, Benin. There were colonies as far as back in 500 BC, and they call that the foreign quarters of Memphis. And right above Benin, which you see on the map, Benin, Togo, Benin, Cameroon, you have the Levite cities. Okay, excuse me. Um, you also have the Libyans, right near the Sahara Desert. Um, you have the Senegambia, which is Senegal. Senegal. You also have, like I said, I did in fact, I did two videos when I was showing the whole map. But then that map shows the same people on that map from the book, The Lost Tribe and Myth, are the same exact countries, former French colonies in Africa that we're looking at on my screen right now. You had Jewish, what they call Jewish, but Israelite colonies in that area. I'm going to read a little part from the book, The Lost Tribe, a Myth. Now, I think I'm going to start with, I'm going to go ahead and read this little amount that I have highlighted here. It's just a little short. It says the region immediately west of their Africa, the Roman called Numidia, while the Mauritania, see we said Mauritania, the Mauritania right here, Mauritania. It says in Mauritania, roughly approximately the modern Morocco, right here. And on that map from the book, they have the same, they have Mauritania there, Morocco. Let me see. I'm trying to see if there's any, Mauritania. You had, it's called the Kingdom of Kamuri. You have the Jewish Kingdom of Ghanata, which is Ghana. You have The Lam Lam, right below that, the Lam Lam, once a Jewish colony, right next to Timbuktu. So Mauritania is right near Cape Verde and Senegambia. You had Jewish colonies in these African countries. So again, the map that I'm looking at from the Lost Tribe is a Myth have the same colonies here. It's just adding up. Ivory Coast, Togo, Benin, and these here all around again the Slave Coast, the Ivory Coast, and the Gold Coast. That's why they call it the coastland in this book, because there were Jewish colonies in the coastlands of Ivory Coast, Gold Coast, and Slave Coast. But anyway, it says it would be noticed that a thousand and years since Solomon time. Let me go over this. Let me read this again. It's the region immediately west of of Africa, the Roman called New Media, while Mauritania, roughly approximately the modern day Morocco. Modern day Morocco. That's back then. It said it would be noticed that 1,000 years since Solomon time had not altered the nomad mode of life. And as for the settled population, it was active, hardy, and very much mixed. Its ethnic and religious element do not interest the Salus as a Roman political organization, and conflict are his theme. Talking about Salus was the guy, the individuals writing about this area. It says, but the ethnic and religious commonly commingling are our only concern, and here too notable defect of much Jewish writing among the North Africa are to be kept in mind. Some of this kind of like the book that it's a rewrite of the book. It's not the original book, but it is a copy of it, and it's pretty much the same as that the original. But sometimes they make these when they copy them that you can't read. It's a little light, but it's not that light. So forgive me when I kind of stumble because I'm trying to read through the book because some of the letters are pretty light. It says one is the assumption that Hebrew was the language of the Armenians, Israelite patriarch, and that all the culture expressed in the Hebrew language is to be credited to the Israelites. It says the other one results of the pretension to have always been a segregate, secluded, historically aloof people, is a continued discounting of the Old Testament, indication of early Israelites' commercial travels, and a general disregard of the notice of the Israelite colonies and garrison place in Africa as early as the 7th century. So he's talking about these colonies on the west of Africa, Jewish colonies. This is what he's talking about. It says, in contrast with these assumptions, we have always to remember what was pointed out in chapter 4, that the language which we call Hebrew or Phoenician was spoken in Palestine and northward for 1,000 years or more before there was an Israelite, in which there were. There were Canaanites living in that area before the Israelite got there, because Canaan was given to Israel by God, that land. It says the Phoenician was spoken in Palestine and northward. Or let me go back. It says the contrast with these assumptions, we have always to remember what was pointed out in chapter 4, that the language which we call Hebrew or Phoenician was spoken in Palestine and northward for 1,000 years or more before there was any Israel in Palestine. Correct, because Palestine was changed, Canaan was changed from Palestine, or actually Canaan was changed from Canaan to Palestine. The original name was Canaan, then they changed to Palestine. That the Armenian called Israel lost their Aramaic speech and were wholly absorbed by the Hebrew speakers, which is correct. These Hebrew Phoenician traders then had more than 1,000 years in which to spread among the Mediterranean coast before there were any Israelites to venture about with them. That Isaiah calls the speech where colonization was going on in Egypt, the language of the Canaan. And that's found in Isaiah. He's giving a quote of Isaiah. And that's Isaiah chapter 19, verse 18 says, "In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan or Palestine, and swear to the Lord of hosts on the Lord of hosts, one shall be called the city of destruction." So that was Isaiah 19:18 that the writer is quoting. So Isaiah 19:18 is of a special importance when we remember that the language current in Phoenician North Africa during the early Christian century were also known to Greek writers as the Canaanite until well into the 5th century. Much Christian literature was produced in this coastland. So coastland, again, Ivory Coast, and on the map, his map that he shows all these Jewish colonies, it has the Ivory Coast, the Gold Coast, and the Slave Coast, and that would be the coastland. It says the coastland, um, Lugana Franco. It says this fact is recognized by the Jewish scholar Heinrich Lloyd. Then we have Christian writers like St. Augustine, who lived among them, meaning the Israelites, and worked for them, calling the people of the North African coast colonies. Again, coast colony would be the Gold Coast, the Ivory Coast, and the Slave Coast. It's called the coast colonies. Um, it says Procopius quotes an Armenian writer of the 5th century who said that the Canaanites still live in Africa and spoke the Phoenician language. The Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 91a, says that the Canaanites in Africa asked Alexander the Great to restore to them the land wrestled from them by Joshua ben Nun. One or two early Christians fathers noted that the people spoke Hebrew. The identity of Hebrew, Phoenician, and Canaanite would be observed, but the term Canaanite for the coastland language and tradition eventually had the preference. So again, this is just telling us, the book is telling us that the map that he has showing all these different colonies. And I'm going to go back and read them again, and I'm going to end this. I just want to make this point. You may want to go pull up um, it's called, the better way you can find his map is called The Lost Tribe, A Myth, Alan H. Godbey, 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 and just say map, and then it'll bring up the map with the different colonies. Then go look at the map that I have up showing former French colonies in Africa, and it's going to show you it's going to compare, and what I just read out of the book applies to these people in these areas. And up till this day, they're going. France is talking about going to war with God's people, which he knew then when they separated this and divided these countries up. They knew exactly who they were dividing, and gave them names other than the true name, which is Israel or Hebrew Israelites. They gave them names and locations or areas like Ivory Coast, Togo, Benin, Cameroon. That was the land of Judah. But they also had other tribes in upper lands called the Levites and so forth. But go get this copy, pull it up on the internet, Google it, and just Google The Lost Tribe and Myth map by Alan H. Godbey, and then you'll see it. And then go pull up the map, former French colonies in Africa, and compare both maps and see. You'll see what I'm talking about. They knew where these people were. They knew where we were. So, and again, they changed our name, changed our people name, changed their location, gave them these tribal names, and then also created these locations for them, and then called them by the land that they gave them, rather than call them by the name and the land that was given to them, that was Israel and Israelites. And that's what they did, and they're trying to go to war with God's people in West Africa, because they want to go to war in West Africa. French want to go to war with West Africa because he's trying to protect his resources. Check this out, his resources. But anyway, France has been um, distilling and just draining Africa back since the 18. I have a book here. I mean, they have a long history of colonization. He just do not want to let go. But God gonna make them let go because they're getting ready to go to war with God. When they go and messing with God's people over there in West Africa, and all His people still in those areas, and those have Jewish colonies over there, and they're messing with them, they're getting ready to go with the war with the Most High God. They ain't going to war with us. And I can't wait to see the day that He deal with them because He's gonna deal with them soon and swiftly. Trust me. The Word said He's gonna do it, and you can see how everything is changing up. So just go ahead, Mr. Frenchie. Go ahead and mess with West Africa. You met because, like I said, you're dealing with God's people, and you're going to war against God, not the God's, not these people. You're going against, I'm going to war against God Himself. So go ahead and try it, but you're not going to prevail. That's for sure. So anyway, I just wanted to get on here today because, like I said, I was looking at these the former French colony in Africa. Um, this is by the year of the independence. I said, wait a minute, these countries are the same country mentioned in Gabi's book. So I went and looked at the calendar, his calendar, and showing the Jewish colonies there. And sure enough, the exact same colonies and the areas that he have on his map, mapping out the Jewish colonies there in West Africa, and the exact same map of the people on former French colonies in Africa. So that's telling me that they are getting ready to try to go to war against God's people in West Africa. So again, we know that when you come against God's people, you're coming against Him. And I say that and say shalom and God bless. Stay safe, everyone.